Welcome back to another episode of the Pit Lane Yappers. I'm Mox.
And I'm Rosie, and this is our Imola recap.
There were two big announcements before Imola. One was Oliver Oakes stepped down as team principal for Alpine, and Flavio Briatore took his place, which is crazy. Getting banned from FIA-regulated motorsports for life to becoming a team principal again is a crazy villain arc.
Not even like 20 years have gone. Also, with regards to Oliver Oakes, his brother was arrested for like high stakes fraud or something. He owns like high tech in F2 and F3, and they've embezzled like millions of dollars or something. And Oliver Oakes has fled to Dubai.
Well, I also was like, so does this mean high tech racing can't race in F2, but like they are still racing?
I found a contact in the connections in the east of London.
Anyways, then the second announcement also has to do with Alpine. Jack Doohan has officially been replaced by Franco Colapinto, but for 5 races.
Well, he said that, and then Flavio released another statement saying he never said that.
Yeah, well, also Flavio Briatore was like, no, I didn't have Piquet Jr. Crash.
Well, yeah, he's going to say that.
And Renault was like, yes, he did. So I don't really take Flavio for his word at all. But anyways, that was like the big before Imola news. But that takes us into Friday. So free practice 1.
Wait. Charles had a special helmet for Imola. I don't know if anyone else did. Not too interested.
Kimi did.
Just that Charles' helmet was the same as his mechanics, which I thought was quite cute, actually.
That's very cute.
Yeah.
But Kimi also had a special helmet, but it is Kimi's home race.
Oh, yeah.
And he, for Friday, for free practice, he invited his entire class to watch him.
How cute!
And everyone's like, wow, Kimi's like the rookie. He's getting, a movie about him. He's in Lewis Hamilton's seat when Lewis left. Like, this is big. And I'm like, no. Everyone's like, no. His biggest feat to this day is getting 17 hardcore Italians to wear Ferrari's rival team merch.
Listen, to be honest, I don't think it's that difficult these days. Ferrari is such a shit show that...
Okay, but anyways, this was also the weekend where the biggest updates so far has come. Aston Martin brought the biggest package. Did you see Aston Martin's upgrades?
Did I see them? No. Did I know about them?
I didn't know if you saw the announcement, because like on free practice on F1 TV, it had a list of all the cars. Aston Martin has an entire new car. Floor, side pods, halo, wheel covers, front wing, rear wing, diffuser. I was like, bro, just got a whole new car.
I didn't know
we needed one.
I didn't know you could change the halo. Ferrari next for a new car, please.
The halo, they say it's a halo, but like Sam Collins goes through it, and it was like just like a little shift. Like it wasn't like, oh, it's a big upgrade to the halo. It was just like the windows were larger or whatever. It's for aerodynamics. You can't technically change the halo, but this was also another test run for the C6 tire. That's the new soft tire for 2026 from Pirelli. It didn't seem much different.
Well, no, but then I'm not that interested in tires, to be honest.
I'm not listening to like all the radios, and it was either George or Max, and I can't remember. They were like, there's no really point testing the soft tire after we tested these. These aren't any different than what the soft tire is going to give us. And I was like, great. We are screwed. Aston Martin is screwed. We were not doing well for free practices, okay?
When have you been doing well?
Qualifying.
Yes, but not at any point before free practice in Imola have you done well.
Also, David Valsecchi was back. I think we should start a petition where he replaces Danica Patrick.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Jensen, I have a petition for you.
Jensen would sign it. He'd be like, this is a petition to get Danica Patrick signed. This was also Lewis's first time racing in Ferrari in Italy. He has driven the Ferrari before on track. It just was never in a race. It was just like their preseason testing. So that was exciting to see. He also said it was one of his best drives.
Ferrari, think that's a lie.
Ferrari brainwashed him to say that, I'm convinced, but it was kind of crazy to see the sea of red with his neon yellow. He's going to
be saying he's best friends with Nico next thing you know. Everyone's watching the brainwashing in real time.
But this was like, that was like halfway through practice, because free practice 1 was not that interesting until Charles Leclerc had no idea where he was on track, and Fernando almost crashed into him, and Alonso literally was like, what is with this Ferrari? Why is the Ferrari always in my way? Charles was noted for impeding. Nothing came out of it because it was FP1. Also, it was Italy. They're never going to punish their golden boy.
Also, Charles had an issue with helmet lift.
Whatever that means.
That would only happen to him. I'm telling you. That was the sort of shit that only would happen.
It happened to Yuki in Miami. I think it was the same thing. They were saying it's the same thing, like where it was it was gaping too much for the air, so it was like lifting their visors. But like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
But also, we need to talk about Bortoleto for a second, because everyone was on track. The McLarens, Red Bulls, Mercedes, Ferraris, like everyone was on track. Gabriel Bortoleto went P2.
In the Sauber.
He had 40 minutes left, but he went P2, and I was like, I'm sorry, does that say BOR? Hello?
I just think, I feel like all the rookies who aren't Kimi feel like they've got an extra point to prove, because why does Kimi get a whole movie about him and they're all just kind of there, you know?
Yeah, speaking of Kimi, this is so off topic, but there's a charity match for Jules Bianchi today in Monaco, and Aston Martin's hosting it, but it's like all the drivers.
Football Charles.
Well, they listed all the players, and it was like I Hajar, C Sainz, O Behrman, F Alonso, and then it was just Antonelli. No K Antonelli, just Antonelli. Because he's the new Beyonce of F1.
His whole name is Andrea Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah. But speaking of Italians, we're going to talk about Ferrari still. Lewis Hamilton came onto the radio and he goes, the car just won't stop. Whatever that means.
I don't know.
Also, everyone was hitting the curbs and going onto the grass or the gravel. And I was like, oh, this is not going to go well for my weekend. Everybody knows Fernando Alonso and gravel are like this. I was really, really scared.
I would just like to say rest in peace to that rabbit.
2 rabbits, actually.
Yeah.
Pierre went over 2 rabbits in this session.
Never trust the French.
But after Bortoleto went P2, he did end the session. 2 minutes to go of the session, Bortoleto crashed into the wall, and it was a red flag. Well, it was yellow into red.
Well, there was a lot of that this
Um,
weekend.
Yeah. And so that ended the session. The drivers couldn't get practice starts in, but it wasn't that big of a deal because it wasn't a sprint race weekend. So they had 2 more practices to do it. And the top 3 were Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, and Carlos Sainz, which was crazy. Williams was cooking this weekend.
Williams are having at least one podium this year. Mark my words.
Yeah.
Alex Albon is going to be on that P3, P2 step.
Silverstone. Anyways, that brings us to FP2. Speaking of Carlos Sainz going P3, not even it was like between FP1 and FP2, it came out that Carlos was noted for speeding in the pit lane, and he was fined €1,000,
which is basically pocket change to him.
Yeah, but what also happened in FP1, which came out after FP1 but before FP2, Ferrari and Charles were investigated because someone noted that they were changing tire pressures during practice, which is not allowed. And so they were noted for it, and it was still being investigated during FP2. I think it was actually qualifying, it came out, and they were like, yeah, they just got a slap on the wrist. But for the entire FP2, that is what the commentators, they were like, I wonder what's going to happen, because last time that's what got Lewis Hamilton disqualified, but that was during a race. So what do they do during practice?
You can't disqualify for practice, can you?
Yeah, like they were like, what's going to happen? Is it a fine? Is it going to be a penalty? Is it going to be what? But Fernando Alonso wasn't on the screen a lot during these practices, except when he almost hit someone. This time it was Franco Colapinto, who had absolutely no self-awareness of where he was on track. And Alonso, once again, came flying around a corner, and Franco Colapinto was smack in the middle of the track, and was also noted for impeding. Everybody wanted Alonso dead this weekend, apparently, so...
Well...
that was not fun to watch, but do you know who was fun to watch?
Who?
Alex Albon.
Real.
He was having such a good, practice session. People, they were not talking about it all that much, but I was, when you were watching the times, Albon did not drop to the bottom half of the grid, except when people were doing runs when he was on, the out laps. He was consistently improving, which... he's Alex Albon, of course it was going to happen, but it was very impressive to watch, since last year he had 7 pit stops and then DNF'd.
We've still got Canada to go.
Yeah.
No.
But both Ferrari drivers were complaining about their brakes. Charles was like, I don't know what you did, but these are wrong.
This was actually...
Ferrari didn't bring upgrades, I don't think, to their brakes this race, so it should not have changed.
This was an absolutely horrible weekend for me, to be honest. Whatever.
Yeah. It was a pretty great weekend starting, and then the race happened, and I was like, okay, well, that happened. Also, Max said that there was something hitting his foot when he was braking only into turn 2, and they were like, that should not have been said on the radio, because last time Lando said that on the radio, he got fined. Red Bull did not get fined, to my knowledge, but it wasn't even noted or investigated, but it was the same thing that McLaren and Lando had last race or 2 races ago, where they were fined because he said it on the radio, and they were like, oh, unsafe conditions. I just don't understand the FIA and how they decide.
Does anyone?
I don't understand at all what, why? Not even why, but why did McLaren get fined for that, but Red Bull wasn't even investigated?
talking of the FIA, we do have some FIA news regarding Hamilton. Not the Hamilton you guys are thinking of. Anthony Hamilton, Lewis's dad, has been, I don't know, scooped up into the organisation. Doing something. I don't know.
I don't really, it's like something about, I don't really understand it.
It's something about something, but, you know, he works for them now.
Congratulations to him. But 7.5 minutes to go, there was a yellow flag. Isaac was in the gravel. He tried to get himself out. And then he had to wait for, I think Pierre was going by, or Yuki, somebody was going by, and he tried to rev and he stuck himself in the gravel, and that turned to a red flag. And that is when Lance Stroll was noted for not following the race director's instructions. Your Honor, who cares? Who cares?
It's free practice. Boo.
Also, it's an Aston Martin, guys, where you can't take points away when they don't exist.
I mean, Stroll has points.
That's true. But they did get to do like a practice start, but that was basically it. And that was what Lance got noted on, because I guess during a yellow flag right into a practice start, they have like a different formation starting spot. Guys, that's too many rules for me to remember. Like, if I was Lance, I'd be like, oh shoot, my bad, I literally forgot.
I can't even learn all the normal driving rules.
FP3. So this is now Saturday morning.
The fastest in FP2 were the McLarens again, and then Gasly.
Oh yeah, forgot about that. Yeah, that was illegal car. Ding 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 ding. Illegal car.
For sure.
We're gonna talk about that, but FP3. So the next day, Saturday, I think it was Saturday morning for them, or afternoon. I'm not sure, but Aston Martin had a point to prove. They literally, the light went green and they were out. Both of them were out. Like, what? And for anybody who, everyone's like, yeah, of course, but like, you don't understand, Aston Martin would never. Aston Martin has never done that. They wait and they're like, you know what, let's have everybody else get data on their free laps and nobody else is on the track. We'll just stay till everyone's on the track so we can't get any data. But not this time. Thank God. While Fernando Alonso was on track, though, they had a little fun fact. Fernando Alonso is the only driver on the grid currently to have raced in the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, which was the race before it was the... I cannot pronounce the entire Grand Prix, but it was the Grand Prix before this Grand Prix.
That's because Alonso has been on the grid for 20 years.
Anyways, moving on. This was also the free practice where the commentators, like, I mean, good for them, I guess, but like, they were not talking about anybody but Oscar Piastri in a good way. Like,
real.
Literally, like, Williams was going 1-2, and they were like, Oscar Piastri has had a great start to his career. And I was like,
it was actually me.
Williams is going P1 and P2. Hello.
It was actually me in the commentator box. You didn't recognize my voice. Actually me in there.
Also, once again, Alonso was fighting everyone on track. He almost hit a Ferrari again because they were in the middle of the track. And this is when he decided he had enough. He got onto the radio and he goes, yeah, the Ferraris always think they're alone on track.
No, man, the car just doesn't stop.
No, they were in the middle of the track and they had the blue flag and they didn't move. Once again, noted for impeding, but I feel like free practices, they don't really care. I will say, however, that was the big issue for qualifying. Everyone was like, this is where impeding is really important because they will mark you down for impeding and they will give you grid penalties for qualifying. So it was very interesting to see how many people were impeding, specifically Fernando Alonso. And I was like, wow, all the Ferraris, both Alpines, every single person is about to get a grid penalty because they keep impeding Alonso. But quali happened and none of them did, so good for them. Also, speaking about Fernando Alonso, everybody else was doing like the race simulations with the tires, seeing if they could go one stop or two stop or whatever. And Ruth came on to F1 TV and she goes, yeah, the Astons have a complete different strategy. They're testing their medium tires, they're testing their soft tires, but they have not touched their hard tires. And I go, sounds like Aston Martin. Sounds like Aston Martin. Because, like, no offense, all these Ferrari fans going like, oh, woe is me. Ferrari doesn't have a race strategy. Ferrari sucks. Ferrari at least is on the board.
Hang on a minute. Ferrari is definitely allowed to go, woe is me, in Italy with the state of this.
Fernando Alonso has finished 2 races this season. Oh. And then right after that, they were talking, literally as they were talking about the Aston Martin strategy, a yellow flag came out and everyone was like, and Lawson just spun.
Likely.
Still don't know what happened. They said he lost the rear. It didn't look like he lost the rear.
But hey.
Maybe he did. And then George also came on the radio and he's like, this drive is 10 times worse than what I was driving yesterday. How that's possible? Welcome to George Russell. I don't know how to explain it other than George Russell. George Russell has the Alonso gene in the sense of things happen to him and nobody can explain it, and somehow he's blamed for it.
Yeah, basically.
But, also, I don't know if you caught Lando and his race engineer Will on the radio, but Will came on and he's like, yeah, mate, just believe in yourself. You got to keep believing in yourself. And Lando's like, yeah, but I don't believe in the front wing.
Well, he said, it's not me, bitch. Listen.
He's like, yeah, I do believe in myself. I know I can go fast. I've won races before, but this front wing, don't believe it. That was basically it. Lando went fastest, then it was Oscar, and then it was Max Verstappen.
Very telling.
And that takes us
to quali.
Yeah, to quali. Everyone, Fernando Alonso went P2 so quickly. And that was with a Mercedes on track. So I was like, oh my gosh, guys, we are in it. The upgrades worked. Then it was red flagged. And we probably had one of the worst crashes of the season. I know it's only round 6 or 7, but I don't think there's going to be a crash bigger than this. Yuki Tsunoda crashed. He flipped.
It was scary. Like,
and without that halo, he probably would have been dead. But he got out of the car. Can we also just note how slow the medics were to get to Yuki?
Fucking ridiculous. The crash, like, that was, like, so bad. Like, the grid.
It was kind of like Zhou Guanyu's Silverstone crash when he was, like, wedged between the barriers.
Yeah.
But it was, nobody was around Yuki. It was literally just him.
No, George was like, oh, I'm glad he walked out of that one.
Everyone, like, they were showing the radios and they were like, every single driver was like, is he okay? It was bad. I didn't watch it live because I was at work.
I didn't either.
And I watched live timings and I just saw the red flag and Fernando P2 and I was like, Fernando P2, yeah, let's go. And I was like celebrating and everyone's like, Yuki literally could have died. And I was like, I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, and then I saw the clip. Awful.
It was like, thank God Yuki is okay. I was like, there's no way he can race after that. He literally came out unscathed.
Yeah, like he pulled himself out.
Which just goes to show the engineering and the halo and everything that goes into this car is obviously driver safety first. Just thank God Yuki's okay.
Yeah.
And I was really glad F1 TV didn't show the crash until they knew Yuki was okay. They just showed the aftermath. And then they went right to the garages. And then Yuki got cleared and got the medic and he said, I'm okay. And then they showed the crash. But like, I'm very glad F1 TV had the respect to just
wait
to see if he's okay. But he got checked. He was fine. He raced the next day. But Red Bull definitely had a lot of work cut out for him. And while this was all going on, all the drivers were waiting in their garage because they said, you know, Q1 is going to continue. We just don't know when. And then Franco Colapinto got noted for going into the fast lane, which was the lane out of the pit lane, before the restart time was announced. And if you listened to his radio, I guess his engineers were talking amongst themselves like, yeah, we'll send him out. Yeah, we can send him out then. And there was like some miscommunication. He was sent out and he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought that was for me. That was on the engineers.
Yeah, totally.
Have you ever heard of muting yourself?
Or like
when I'm on the phone call and I have a question, I go, hey, I have a
yeah.
But they started with 7 minutes to go again. An Alpine of Pierre Gasly was P1. And then Alonso went P1. And I was like, actually, we can stop the race again. We can stop. This is Fernando Alonso pole position. That's great. We don't need Q2 or Q3. And then Franco Colapinto crashed with like 15 seconds to go. And this is where the controversy came in, because it was Hülkenberg and then Ollie Behrman. No. Yeah?
No,
it was Bortoleto. Gabriel Bortoleto. He was right above the line, and he crossed the line, and then Ollie Behrman crossed the line. Ollie set a time faster than Bortoleto. However, the FIA and the Steward said Ollie crossed the line after the red flag was flown. But if you see on onboards and like even like the halo cam and everything, he crossed the line before the red flag, but they said he didn't, so he got out. So the drivers that were out were Yuki Tsunoda, Ollie Behrman, Esteban Ocon, Nico Hülkenberg, and Liam Lawson. And we need to note, Lance Stroll, only driver on mediums, and set P4. My goat. He was literally the only driver on mediums. Only driver. And that takes us to Q2.
Oh.
This was a bad moment for Rosie. This was a great moment for me. But before we get to why, everyone was slipping and sliding. Literally everyone. Like, not one driver had a clean lap for the longest time. And then Alpine, Gasly got impeded by an Aston, and he goes, who was that in the Aston? I'll remember him. What in the world?
Also, there's only 2 drivers it could have possibly have been.
Like, I was like, oh my gosh, that is a threat. But nothing really happened in Q2, except Ferraris went quite fast, but they were right on the line. And there were like 30 seconds to go. And the Astons, I could cry. The Astons were the only cars left to go. And Fernando Alonso came over the line and he knocked out Charles Leclerc, and Lance Stroll came over the line and he knocked out Lewis Hamilton. So both Ferraris were out at their home Grand Prix, and Kimi Antonelli was out. And the Ferraris got knocked out by both Aston Martins. If you told me at the beginning of the season,
I told you we're allowed to say "woe is fucking me."
I'm telling you right now, if you told me at the beginning of the season that Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll would knock out both Ferraris, I would have laughed in your face. Now I'm like, anything is possible. And people are suspecting that, so Aston Martin came out and said Adrian Newey can't work on our 2025 car, sorry. But he is allowed to give input, and he wants to put some of his upgrades that he wants to bring to 2026 onto 2025, which is allowed. And they believe that some of the Newey upgrades came this race because the Astons improved like exceptionally well, and our upgrades have never worked like that. Okay. But the drivers that were out were Franco Colapinto, Gabriel Bortoleto, Kimi Antonelli, Lewis Hamilton, and Charles Leclerc. Sorry, I don't really feel that bad for Ferraris, but I feel horrible for Kimi Antonelli. Because, like, Ferraris, you're expecting it at this point, but Kimi Antonelli, it's his first home race. And I don't know what stream you were watching, but I was watching F1 TV, and DC was like, maybe he shouldn't have invited his classmates.
That's rude.
He's like, this is why drivers can't be distracted. Sir, shut up. Anyways, Q3, nothing really happened, except that Oscar Piastri kept getting traffic, and he still set one of the most beautiful laps I've ever seen and got pole position. And then, because both Astons were in, Fernando Alonso was P5 and Lance Stroll was P8. I celebrated that P5 and P8 like it was a championship. I cried at work. My entire work knew Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll got through Q3 and got P5 and P8 and higher than Ferraris and a Mercedes. Yeah.
Onto the race.
That's all that mattered. Onto the race. Actually, before the race, when they were on the grid, but like before the formation lap, Williams had an issue with Alex Albon's car. To this day, don't really know what it was, but they basically took apart half of the car and tried to fix it, and they interviewed Alex, and they were like, are you nervous? And he goes, no, that's James's job.
He said, I didn't get paid for that.
And also, little fun fact, this is the first time in Imola's history that neither Ferrari were in the top 10. So sorry.
It's okay. Last year on the calendar. Next.
Maybe. Most likely. So then we got into the race start. Max Verstappen, you rock my world. So everyone's like, Imola is really important to take pole. Imola is basically Monaco, but on a circuit instead of a street. And overtaking is basically impossible except for like one place. Max Verstappen overtook into turn 1.
No, it was turn 2, really. But
turn 2. Turn 1 doesn't exist though, because turn 1's like a little whew. No, even the commentators don't count turn 1. It was gorgeous. It was a beautiful overtake. Everyone's like, that was Oscar's overtake on Lando last year in Monza, I think. And Max Verstappen, after that, just had control.
I was watching the post-race show, and they said, because you know, in the race, Max braked super late, which is why he took the corner. But yeah, they said Max actually compliments Oscar by doing this because he leaves a tiny gap to the car.
Yeah,
and he's confident that Piastri isn't going to crash into him or understeer. He's confident that Oscar's so aware of his like racecraft and driving that he knows that if he moves, he's going to injure Max. So
I will say though, in the post race, when I don't remember who was, it was like a post-race interview. I don't remember who was interviewing him, but Oscar was like, yeah, it's disappointing. Should have just braked later. And I was like, yes, you should have, but also you had George Russell right behind you, and that's who you're watching, and Max Verstappen came out of nowhere and overtook you. So
You
I
can't
feel
have
like
it both ways, you know, like you live and you learn, I guess.
I feel like even if like people were like, oh, a lot of people on the internet were like, oh, if that was George, he'd know Max was coming, or if that was Charles, he'd know to look out for Max, or Lando, or whoever it was. And I'm like, no, but if you're looking at somebody and you're seeing George, if you brake or you do something, they will crash into you. You're not going to be expecting Max Verstappen to come around because he should be right behind you.
Max only did that move because he knew Oscar couldn't brake later because George was there. But like, you know, Max knows how good a driver George is.
Yeah.
They've
also been racing. George and Max have been racing for as long as Charles and Max have. So like,
yeah,
Max knows half of that grid's driving style.
And like, you know, those three, they're all aware of how good each other are.
Yeah.
It's just that Oscar has far less experience than either of the other two.
But that overtaking in that chat was happening, and nobody focused on Esteban Ocon pitting.
Immediately, yeah, I did think that.
Like literally on lap 1. What?
Reminds me of Canada 2024.
But then lap 3 is when we had a little more fighting. Pierre versus Charles. Pierre was off the track and dropped to P14, and he's like, no, that's just not fair. Charles, that's not fair. And the commentators were like, sometimes racing is hard.
Well, like, life isn't fair. Get over it.
They noted it, but no further investigation. They were like, it was just hard racing. But this was also when they showed the start. And do you know who had the fastest start, the best reaction time?
Was it Fernando Alonso?
No, it was not.
Who was it?
It was George Russell. He had the cleanest start of his career, is what they said. They're like, Fernando was next. But that's expected. Fernando Alonso has always had the fastest start. But George, like in the top 10, like it was crazy how good his start was. And while they were complimenting him there, they were still talking about it. Lap 10, George came on and he's like, I can't save these tires. I'm pushing too hard because everyone's behind me and they're pushing me harder. And Mercedes was like, yeah, we don't see any deg. And he was like, okay.
I don't know what it is with Mercedes this season, but they just seem to be like, no, that's not a thing.
And while that was going on, Fernando Alonso joined the fight. But he didn't really fight that hard. I mean, Lando, he was not going to overtake a McLaren. Lando was fighting George, and Fernando seemed to have backed off. He probably was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm in Aston. I gotta calm down. But this is when Lando tried to overtake George the first time, and he went into the grass, and George literally came onto the radio like not even 3 seconds later, and he goes, I don't know, he just drove himself into the grass. George was like, I'm not getting marked. And then lap 12 is when Mercedes was like, okay, maybe George is correct. They pit George, and Williams pit Carlos Sainz, both for hard tires. And then the next lap is when Alonso pit. Who knows who we're fighting at this point. And this was also when Alonso was leaving the pit lane and his brakes caught on fire.
Listen, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with...
Why? Okay, listen, I get sometimes your brakes overheat, but like, I don't understand how it's constantly Fernando Alonso's brakes on fire and no one else's. What? And, like, it would be different if him and Lance had the same issue, but what do you mean Lance never has had that issue?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just strange.
And it's not like one brake, it's both of his brakes. And they're like, it's going to go out when he gets faster. And I'm like, or with how much oxygen is in the air, it's going to get bigger.
Yeah.
It didn't. It did go out. But this was also, I don't know what was going on, but they were going on his onboard and they were like talking about his brakes. And he was like fiddling with something. He's driving 100 something miles per hour, right? One hand. And he's ripping off something of his visor and goes across. I'm like, dude, excuse me, pay attention to the road.
Hello, please look where you're going.
And then the next lap is when Oscar pit, and they had a pretty slow pit stop. So the average time lost in the pit is 28 seconds. McLaren usually is fast. They usually have like a 2.1, 2.2 stop, and that's pretty fast. Oscar Piastri had a 3.6 second pit stop. This is when McLaren's strategy went down the hill because they were expecting a fast pit stop and they didn't. Oscar came out behind Yuki, who was like P14, P13, something like that. And they came onto the radio because Oscar obviously has the faster car, and Oscar is still racing Max, even though Max is P1 and Oscar is P whatever. They came onto the radio and they were like, hey, Yuki, so Oscar's behind you. Can you keep him behind you? The answer is no, he couldn't. Oscar overtook him pretty easily the next lap.
In Yuki's defense, man, his car's just been like sellotaped back together. Give him a fucking break.
And to be completely fair, as Oscar Piastri said about Max Verstappen, when Oscar Piastri is in a McLaren, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah, totally.
He passes you. Same with Lando. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. McLaren has a rocket ship.
Although, for those who also are not following Oscar closely, just before this weekend, he was granted honorary citizenship of a town near Imola, where his great-great-grandfather was born or something. So this is a home race again for him.
But at the same time that Oscar overtook Yuki, Alex Albon, P3.
It was looking like there was going to be a Williams podium this race.
I really thought Alex Albon was going to be P3.
He got a taste of P5 the other week and he's been locked in ever since.
Also, like a few laps later, Hamilton was not happy. He was stuck in traffic. He was like, all right, there's no way I'm going to move up. He came onto the radio and he's like, we got to undercut them if we're going to do anything. And Ferrari was like, yeah, no, we don't have a gap.
Yeah, well, welcome to Ferrari.
This was also the lap that George was struggling as well. Mercedes together once again. George radioed in and he's like, hey, my rears are moving even on the straights when they're not supposed to. Something is broken. However, that usually doesn't mean something's broken, because if something's broken, you're more likely to lose control. They believed it was the mechanic just didn't screw in the rears all the way, which is so likely of Mercedes.
These people get paid
one job.
These people get paid thousands of pounds to do.
Actually, pit mechanics do not get paid that much.
Yeah, but their whole job.
Yeah, their whole job is to make sure the tire's on. But I also noted at that moment, Isaac Hadjar, they weren't showing him and they weren't talking about him, but he was like P4 with I think it was Lando. It was either Lando or Charles behind him, and he was keeping them behind him. He was like, he's like, I'm in a far inferior car, but you are not passing me.
If they're not talking about a driver, especially in like Charles' case, I take that as an immensely good thing. I'm like, oh, good. That means he's completely fine.
And then also, I think it was the lap, like 2 laps or 3 laps after, on lap 27, Alex Albon came on. He's like, come on, guys, let's not be stupid. He was still in P3, but like everyone was like, what was that about? And I was like, it's literally because he has the oldest tires on track.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, guys, I am not going to be able to finish this race on these tires. Don't worry, lap 29, Lando pit. His stop was perfect. It was a 2.1. Literally, as he was leaving the pit lane, a yellow flag. And a safety car came out. Ocon was in the grass.
On purpose.
He pulled over himself. He had a complete mechanical malfunction. The car stopped. He literally was like, guys, we have a problem. And just pulled over, which I don't know if a rookie would have done that. It really shows how much experience he has, because it seemed like he knew it. He was slowing down way before the car just broke. I don't know. Maybe the rookies would know, but I feel like that comes with experience and time. Thanks, Alpine. I feel really bad because usually Lando gets pretty lucky with safety cars. Usually he's like, okay, guys, we need to pit. Somehow a safety car always comes out. Unfortunately, this time the safety car came out literally the moment mechanics left Lando's car. But that gave everybody an advantage because Red Bull hadn't pit Max, because they're like, Lando has not pit. We are not pitting before Lando. He will keep you behind him. We need to pit after him. And
it gave Alex a free pit stop as well.
Alex a free pit stop. Basically everyone. Literally everyone but Lando, Fernando Alonso, and Lance Stroll. Okay. One of those makes sense. One had just changed their tires. However, nobody was on Fernando's radio, but I was. And Fernando and Lance were like, can we please pit? We need to pit. My tires are going. Please, please. Like, Fernando Alonso was literally on the radio going, please, we need to pit. I'm going to crash. Please, my tires are gone. And Aston Martin is just like, no, you can stay out. This strategy's great. We were so close, guys. We were so close. We were in the top 10. We were P6 and P8. We were so close. Not even to a podium, to points. Like, hefty amount of points. Because of that strategy, Aston Martin finished out of the points.
Anyway, this safety car...
We need to talk about we need to talk about the pit stop still. George, going into the pits, almost crashed into one of the Haas's. Obviously it's Ollie Behrman, because Esteban Ocon was stationary on the grass. When I say almost crashed, I mean 1 second too late or not strong enough on the brakes. There would have been a backup in the pit lane. Yeah, but this was the pit strategy that kind of just ruined a lot of drivers' race, except Max and Alex. You can talk about Oscar.
So, because they pit Oscar first originally, and it was a slow stop, they pit him, and then Lando pitted before the safety car, so he was out front when Oscar had come into the pits, so that meant Oscar came out behind Lando, which then stayed that way for the rest of the race, because McLaren are totally incompetent. Personally, I would prioritise my driver who was on pole, but...
Well, it wasn't the safety car, it was the... Anyways. It was the next one. But lap 34 or lap 33 is when the safety car was pulled in. This is when Yuki or Carlos, I can't remember who was in front. One of them was in front. Somebody passed. Carlos came on and said, Yuki touched me while passing. That's not fair. They noted it. However, Nothing came out of it. Yuki did hit Carlos. Part of his front wing was gone. He did hit Carlos. The question is, was it bad enough to, Williams to say, hey, can you look at this again? The answer was obviously not, because they didn't, but that was the question. And then lap 40, this is when Alonso, I don't want to talk about it. Lap 40, Hulkenberg overtook Alonso. Alonso was really struggling, and he came on and he's like, yeah, I'm the unluckiest driver in the world. I don't know what I did. This race is awful. Don't make that face. He is the most unlucky driver in the world. No. Charles is on the board with points. You can't talk to me about that. Thank you. Lap 43, both Williams were in the points. Alex was P4. Carlos Sainz was P10. And this is when Alex came on the radio and he's like, okay, my tires are going. I don't think I'm going to have these tires for the rest of the race. There's too many people behind me. Our cars are not qualified to race like this. But don't worry, 3 laps later, Kimi Antonelli pulled over into the grass because he had a complete malfunction of the mechanical issues, and he pulled over and he officially DNF'd his first ever home race.
I feel so bad because it's his first DNF as well.
Oh my gosh, I feel awful. I feel awful for her. I almost cried.
I fear the home race curse is horribly alive and well this year.
I'm telling you right now, I'm so scared for Monaco because I know for a fact it's home race is an issue.
Don't.
Which means George, Lewis, Ollie, Lando, Alex.
That's like a third of the grid.
People. I think that's it. A third of the grid is going to DNF or have issues in Silverstone. Are there any more British? I don't think so. I'm gonna. But don't worry. The Aston's pit. We're now running P15 and P14. Kill me. Lap 60. I think it was like lap 50 something, whatever. Oscar was in front of Lando, but on older tires because they did not pit Oscar. They did pit Lando. That is when I was like, this is interesting. Why are they not pitting the guy who has the older tires, first of all? Second of all, is leading McLaren, but they didn't.
And qualified on pole.
And is leading the championship. And this is when the commentators were like, okay, this is going to be very interesting. This is going to tell us everything McLaren has decided, whether they have decided to make the team happy or have prioritized their leading driver. And the answer was they choose to make the team happy. Lap 60 is when Alex was fighting with Lewis, and Alex went into the grass. He came on, he's like, Lewis pushed me. It was noted. Nothing came out of it. And then lap 62, Alex was fighting the other Ferrari. Charles did overtake him. And then I don't know when this happened, but Lando overtook Oscar, and Lando also came on the radio and he goes, come on, guys, this is just like not fair. I'm not going to make it hard, but I'm going to overtake. And he did. So the finishing podium was Max Verstappen, P1, Lando Norris, P2, and Oscar Piastri, P3. Max Verstappen, you rock my world.
I'm sorry, I'm still not over Williams and Ferrari fighting on track. What year is this? 1980. Give me a break.
I just don't. Anyways, I'm not even gonna say what I think. Actually, yes, I am. Aston Martin, you had a chance. You have a car finally. You have a good car. Okay? You have an amazing car now, actually. We went P5 and P8. We knocked out the Ferraris in qualifying. We need to fire the strategists completely. Gone, goodbye. We don't want you anymore. Bring in some new ones, aka me. I'll make sure that everybody DNFs in front of Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, and they will be on the podium every single weekend. I am not against sabotage. This is why Fernando Alonso is my favorite driver.
You should be working for
a few things on another car.
If you're not against sabotage, you should go to Alpine then. They're all big fans of that over there, I heard.
But that was it for the race. Max Verstappen, you're amazing. I love you very much.
Oscar Piastri, you rock my world. My championship leader. McLaren, watch your backs. Ferrari, I don't even have words.
Wait, we have to do our
winners and losers.
Winners and losers. My winner is Alex Albon.
Real. My winner is Max.
Okay, valid. Mine too, but like he's always my winner, so.
But because that was just a spectacular move.
It proved why he was a 4-time world champion.
Won him the race. And you can't fault Oscar for that move either, really, so.
And then our loser?
Ferrari.
Aston Martin. Yeah, that was painful.
I think we're both thinking the same thing, and I think it's, what the fuck were you doing?
I just don't understand. Everyone's like, what is Aston Martin's strategy? And I'm like, I don't think they have one. Like, I think that's their flaw, is they don't have a strategy. They're just like, you know what? Yeah,
I think they qualified that high, and then they were like, oh shit.
They're like, oh, our upgrades worked. What do we do? Nui, hello, what are we supposed to do? My other loser probably would be George, not because he didn't drive spectacularly, because he's a slept-on driver, but this race did end his P5 streak.
No! I dropped that.
George Russell, you're still amazing. You're still my championship contender. I will also say, this is the second Haas to have an engine mechanical failure. And you know whose engine that is? Ferrari's. And do you know whose home race is next? Charles's.
No, listen to me, Ferrari.
I swear. Race curse.
Ferrari, listen to me. If you fuck this up, you will never sleep again. Maranello.
This is gonna be Spygate 2.0, because literally that all started because a Ferrari worker was so upset at Ferrari's strategy that he copied 800 pages of confidential mechanical work and sent it to McLaren. There has got to be a disgruntled Ferrari employee somewhere being like, what team do I send this to? Please send the strategies towards Aston Martin.
You don't want them.
Yeah, but Aston Martin will then have the strategy of what not to do. They've got nothing right now. But that's it for Imola. Our next race is Monaco. Very excited. Adrian Newey, this will be the first time we see Adrian Newey in British racing green. He will be in Aston Martin and on the pit wall this weekend. Halle frickin' Luya. Halle.
I might do Hallelujah. I might just rewatch last
Monaco 2024.
Yeah. I'm like, yay!
Well, it depends on who wins. My prediction is going to be not who wins, but I think Aston Martin, they have new upgrades again. I think Aston Martin is finally improving, knocking on wood. So I think Aston Martin's going to improve. I honestly don't know who's going to win because this is Monaco. So like I could say like, oh, McLaren's gonna be fast, and then one of them goes into the wall, and then their race is screwed. So, like,
Piastri better put it on pole, because I know Charles is not going to do it. Not in that car.
Well, also, because we're done with the race, it came out that the FIA has changed some technical directions because of Imola, because of a certain team's advantage. They changed this body working rule and a tire warming rule. I don't really understand what the rule was before or what they changed it to, but everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's McLaren. McLaren has come out and said, not us, we didn't change anything, which makes me highly suspicious that they did change something. Just letting everyone know. But at the same time,
honest,
I think it's, I'm going to be honest, I think it's Alpine or Williams. Because they improved way too fast.
No, I definitely think it's the Alpine.
And everyone's like, well, Williams has all this money from Carlos Sainz signing. And I'm like, yeah, but money does not equal good machinery. Money just equals machinery that can be upgraded more often.
Yeah, but I think Alpine is extra suspicious because Oliver Oakes is run away to Dubai. And their principal-in-law has been arrested for millions in fraud and
my bets are on Alpine. Flavio's done it once before, he'll do it again. But
I mean, you don't get banned for life for no reason.
I don't think we'll figure it out. I will say, however, the upgrades for Red Bull seem to have worked. Not that Max was happy with his car, but he's like, yeah, the car's better. But he was still very angry with the car. That unfortunately means Christian Horner will still be with Red Bull. And this victory has also now had Red Bull overtake Ferrari for the most wins in Formula One history.
Mind you, Charles is the Ferrari driver with the most points in Ferrari history. So just take that glimmer of hope there. I don't know where he's pulled all those points from, because the best car he had was in 2022, and he's not had a good one.
The illegal one?
Yeah, the only good one.
To be honest, one of my mutuals on Twitter was like, I think Aston Martin has an illegal car. And I was like, honestly, if they did, would the FIA do anything about it? Because we've got 10 points to our name.
Why would Aston Martin have if you're going to have an illegal car, at least make it
fast. The FIA was like, hey, so this is an illegal car, but we don't really care because it didn't improve the car. It actually made it worse. So keep doing it.
The FIA, they got slipped a note was like, Aston Martin's an illegal car, and they looked at it and were like, okay.
But anyways, that was it for this week, and we will see you for Monaco. Bye.
Yes, Monaco. Bye.